Now, to discuss the timing of the fuel subsidy removal, or why the regime of palliatives have not solved any problems in particular, while suggesting practical and immediate solutions to petroleum products importation scheme, we have oil and gas analyst Bala Zaka with us on Newsday. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, there are many questions that we have to ask today. There's so many situations involving this current dilemma we are in Nigeria, but really, who and what is responsible for the increase in the pump price as we have seen in the last couple of days? Is it the market forces, as Mele Kyari has stated it as, or are there other extraneous circumstances that we ordinary Nigerians might not be aware of?
Well, I can tell you straight away that the entity responsible in this context is the government. And as far as I am concerned, is the government. And as I speak to you right now, I can tell you with all amount of confidence, and quote me for that I said, as far as economic recovery is concerned, as far as energy security is concerned, Nigeria is on the wrong trajectory. Nigeria is on the wrong track. And if we continue at this rate, the Nigerian economy will grind towards the cliff edge and will collapse into the valley. I am saying this, and I said, quote me, and I will give you my reasons in the course of this discussion. But let me tell you this. As far as I'm concerned, I have been monitoring the chronology of errors on the side or on the part of our political and economic leaders. And when the errors became so many, I then started noticing some level of consistency in the errors. And after a while, the only conclusion I arrived at was to graduate these errors to deception. And I have no, honestly, apologies for that. It's very, very clear that we have economic vampires, we have economic marauders, and we have economic traitors on the part of crystallization that should really bring Nigeria out of the woods. I'm telling you this because as we speak right now, I'm happy we have a new sheriff in town. But like probably a week before we got the new sheriff in town, or at the twilight of the immediate past government, many of us knew that subsidy has been removed on the price of diesel. And the only thing we noticed was the collapse in strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors. We noticed that it was very clear that subsidy was removed on the price of aviation fuel. The only thing we noticed was massacre in the aviation sector, cancellation of flights and continuous and mass delays. We didn't benefit anything. Subsidy was also removed on the price of kerosene. At the twilight of the exit of the immediate past government, some of us advised the incoming government that there was only one product remaining. And we made the government to understand that the economy of Nigeria was already prostrate. Nigerians were already groaning. Individuals and corporate citizens were in pains. And we said the only product that was remaining was PMS. And we were going to appreciate it if the government understood the concept of subsidy and didn't remove it. But everything in the air then was people or the press singers were only looking at the savings by removing subsidy on the price of PMS. And some of us were telling them that you are only looking at how much you are going to save. What about the cost of the anarchy and the calamities that you will cause to Nigerians? And it appears nobody listening. But I'm sorry to say that it is very, very unfortunate that when a king or when kings speak, their words are laws. And if subjects try to go against the words of the kings, it will look as if they are going against the laws of the land and they are going against the kingdom. I think that's the dilemma we found ourselves in right now. But I can tell you, the only way back or the only way to make progress is by retracing our strategies. We just have to recalibrate our strategies. If not, Nigeria will be in deep trouble.
All right, Mr. Bala, and a thorn in the flesh of all these narratives is the issue of fuel importation in a zero subsidy regime. Isn't that a boost for inflationary trends? We're still not hearing anything about the moribund refineries, and yet we're still laying emphasis on a private refinery. And when you talk about national security, economic security is also a consideration here. So how does this work?
To be honest, I want to be, I don't think I will be, it will be immodest if I said somehow, somewhere, we had the wrong people on the chain or along the chain of crystallization of our economy. The basic and elementary thing we need to ask ourselves is, first of all, the concept of subsidy. Subsidy is a globally accepted economic pain cushioning concept. Subsidy is a globally tested concept. Subsidies are associated with governments of nations or countries. The equivalent of subsidies when you are dealing with private sector is called discounts or are called discounts. And when you are dealing with the private sector is only after profit maximization and cost minimization. It is only the government of nations that grows citizens. And I want to let you know that as far as people like us are concerned, if subsidy is not working in your country, that will not vitiate or invalidate the global relevance of subsidy. What you need to do is to look inwards and find out why subsidy is not working in your client. And this is the way subsidy is supposed to work. First of all, subsidy is supposed to come from the citizens, from the government to the citizens. In the context of Nigeria, between the government and the citizens, you have the government here, you have subsidy here released to the citizens, but you have saboteurs in between. So what the government was supposed to do the government was supposed to remove the saboteurs and not the subsidy. Because we explained it, we said it, and let us be clear about this. Before subsidy was removed on the price of diesel, we were told that investors were going to come, there were going to be greenfield refineries, there were going to be competitive pricing or prices, and the price was going to come down. Around that time, a liter of diesel was like 87 Nigerian naira. As I speak to you right now, a liter of diesel is about 700 Nigerian naira. And I can tell you with all amount of confidence, and I'm waiting for anybody to challenge me, that I said the minimum wage in Nigeria today cannot buy a 50-liter jerry can of diesel. The monthly minimum wage in Nigeria today cannot buy a 50-kilogram bag of rice. And quote me that I said, any economy where the monthly minimum wage of a citizen cannot buy a 50 kg bag of rice or a 50 kilogram, or a 50-liter jerry can of diesel, that country is in trouble. And anybody who tells you that in the context of Nigeria is on the right track, that person is wrong. And that was why I told you that I have been monitoring the chronology of errors. There was a time we were told that it was coronavirus. We got to a point we were told it was smuggling. We got to the time we were told all kinds of excuses. But we have reached a cul-de-sac. Quote me that I said, for a country that has more than 100 universities, a country that has more than 100 polytechnics, if basic chemistry of refining, boiling, fractionating columns, distillation columns, and addition of sweeteners to produce what we call distillates is difficult for that country, blame the leaders. When we went into democratic dispensation, some of us thought Nigeria was going to do better. We went into democracy in 1999. We are now in 2023. You're talking about 23 good years or 24 years. Even if it will take 10 years to construct a refinery, Nigeria should be having 2 clean and new refineries. But let me tell you something clear, and I stand to be challenged. As far as I am concerned, the last time we constructed a refinery in Nigeria was like in 1989 or 1990. From that time to now, you are talking about 34 years. The current generation of leaders didn't find it necessary to maintain the refineries that they inherited. They didn't find it needful to even construct new ones. We didn't need anybody to tell us that we were going to run into energy crisis. And it is a bit shameful, in fact, very shameful, that as we speak today, Nigeria will be relying on imports, knowing that we have a weak currency, knowing that we are an emerging nation. Some of us knew that once we removed the subsidy on the only remaining product, it was going to be a question of time. Our currency will be devaluated, and it has been devaluated. The next thing we are likely to see is that the Nigerian naira will be redenominated. And what that means is, before you know, we will be asked to have 2,000 naira notes, 5,000 naira notes, 10,000 naira notes, and they will wipe away the smaller notes. Another thing that will happen is we will be forced to open our borders, and Nigeria will become a dumping ground. At that time, we don't need anybody to tell us that we have been reduced to a country of melancholies.
Wow, this is a very dire analysis of the situation, but honestly, no lies told there. This whole situation has been described by individuals as us having the goose that laid the golden egg, and us eventually mismanaging that goose and killing him, and no more golden eggs as we see as the situation is now. With the way that things are going, you've laid out very dire steps of what could possibly happen. Will the price of petrol at the pumps still increase? Is this the last that we have seen of it temporarily? Or do you expect that it would be sharply shooting up in the next couple of weeks? And also, do you think there's some suggestions that there might be a supply issue? If you have any information on that at all, is this part of what is fueling this crisis?
Well, you know, in Nigeria, we are a religious country. So permit me if I say, may God bless you for that question. You know, we are talking about just the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry. We are also experiencing serious calamities in the upstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Because like I speak to you now, quote me that I said, in the whole of Nigeria right now, we don't have up to 15 active drilling rigs. And if we don't have up to 15 active drilling rigs, we don't need anybody to tell us that we are not going to be able to meet up with our OPEC production quota. We don't need anybody to tell us that we are going to have issues with production, and we will not even be able to meet up with our budget concerns and budget deficit. These things are facts. The calamities are everywhere. But the strange thing is this. Quote me that I said, as far as I am concerned, what we are experiencing in Nigeria didn't exist in the Libya of Gaddafi. What we are experiencing in Nigeria does not exist in Iran or Iraq or Saudi Arabia or Malaysia or Indonesia or Qatar or Norway. Quote me. Nigeria is a member of Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. And on the gas cartel side, Nigeria is a member of Gas Exporting Countries Forum with headquarters in Doha. The whole thing some of us have just noticed is there has been this deliberate move to make sure we do not internally domesticate. Quote me that I said this, and I'm ready to have a debate to any level. Before I came on this your program, quote me that I said, I discussed with Nigerians that are working with offshore refineries outside this country. I discussed with Nigerians that are drilling engineers, reservoir engineers, production engineers. I had discussions with them. It is very, very clear that there is a deliberate intention to make sure our refineries do not work. And in virtually everything, some of us could see what I can technically describe as operational lacunas. Let me give you a practical example. It is only in Nigeria that you will have, a whole country feeling that private objectives are the ones to bring the economies of countries out of the woods. It's not correct. Anywhere you see a private investment, that investment is not there because the investor loves the citizens. The investment is there because that investor has carried out his or her feasibility studies and felt that it is there that they are going to maximize profit and minimize cost. I'm sorry, let me digress and say something about Dangote refinery. With due respect, quote me that I said, so it's not, it's the view or the presentation of me, Bala Zaka or Zaka Bala, not Arise Television. We got to a point when we are in the toilets, we are praying for Dangote and Dangote refinery. When we are in the roads, when you are in the mosque, when you are in the churches, and I kept telling people, or we kept telling people, that's a private initiative. But fast forward, let's cut the chase. We got to a point, and we were told that Dangote refinery was going to be commissioned. My understanding of commission, if you commission a restaurant or whatever, or a production facility, immediately you cut the tape and the dignitaries leave. The next thing that will happen is services. If it's a restaurant, they will start serving the customers. If it's a production facility, they will start work. If it's a hospital, they will start functioning. If it's a school, they will start functioning. So I expected that on the day of the commissioning of the Dangote refineries, there was supposed to be crude oil on standby. And we needed to know whether the crude oil came by rail or by pipelines, or they came by road, or even if they came through vessels. But from my experience, and I'm not a rookie in the oil and gas industry, I have not seen anything, even when you go to the oil fields, to show that there are collection points. There are pipelines leading to collection points that from where we're going to collect this crude oil and either bring them to Dangote refineries, either using pipelines or rail lines or through tankers or even through the vessels. So even from that angle, we need to understand that we are presenting Nigeria on a bad light, and it is not good for the image of this country. I have also noticed that because I recently had serious engagement with international bodies, and I was surprised when somebody from one of the international financial corporations was saying that the reason why some of them were advising Nigeria against having refineries inside Nigeria or local refineries is because even if we have government-owned refineries, that the maximum we can save per liter will be like 10 naira. And what I told the guy and ended the entire conference was, I said, oh, so there will even be savings. He said, yes, at least you will save like 10 naira per liter if you refine internally. Then I say, okay, with due respect, sir, we have been told that we import about 70 million liters per day. So if you say we can save 10 naira per liter, then help me to do these calculations. Multiply 10 naira by 70 million. Then multiply the savings by 1 week. Multiply the savings by 1 month. Multiply the savings by 1 year. It's very clear that Nigeria will come out of the woods. It has been clear, like I told you, there have been chronologies of excuses. We couldn't manage coal very well. Before we knew, we got to crude oil. We are told that we cannot manage our crude oil very well, which is basic chemistry. As far as I am concerned, refining is not as complex as heart surgery. Refining is not as complex as
Mr. Zaka, if I may come in here, you just made a point there of which I was going to express on. It's a question and probably a suggestion as well. What happened to the much touted modular refineries, and could they offer a lifeline in a zero subsidy scenario? I remember the former deputy oil minister, Ibe Kajuku, then, always touting that modular refinery rhetoric. And why not refine specific byproducts for domestic market to ensure availability and cost effectiveness? And to, some of which you have already alluded to. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. Again, you made me to remember something. You see, I told you that I have the chronology of excuses. But when the excuses became consistent and I knew they were all erroneous and we thought there was going to be a change, I now graduated the excuses now to deception. And I can justify that. In the days of that minister you were talking about, we were promised greenfield refineries. Where are the greenfield refineries? Where are the investors that they promised were going to come? And let me tell you, for a country like Nigeria, if you're talking about modular refineries, this is what I can tell you. Modular refineries do not produce petrol because they are not equipped with catalytic cracking units. We were told that there were going to be greenfield refineries and they were going to be regionalized. Where are they? Even the savings they talked about, where are they? You see, so these things are very, very practical. They are very, very practical, and you could see. And all of us said, one of the things you need to do is internal domestication. Get the crude oil from the wellhead within Nigeria in Naira. Move them to the respective functional refineries in Nigeria in Naira. Refine them in Naira. Sell to Nigerians in Naira. That will first of all wage you and free you from exchange rate pressures. But what some government praise singers were saying was, but you are dealing with international product. Refinery equipment are going to be imported. And I told some of them, I said, even the eyeglasses you are using are imported. Spare parts will always be imported. Different countries import spare parts. But what we need to do is the internal domestication. So what I'm trying to let you understand is, it's like there are some forces that are just bent on making sure we continue importation. But they have also forgotten that you are talking about a weak country. You're talking about a very poor country. You're talking about a country whose population is close to 200 million. You're talking about a country where 200 million citizens, in addition to strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors, are relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. You don't need anybody to tell you that if you think you are going to become industrialized, you are deceiving yourself. So all I want to let you understand is whoever you have seen bandying all this, they are not talking in Nigerians' interest. And one thing, I'm sorry, I'm a technocrat, but I want to say this to some technocrats. Many Nigerian technocrats have reduced themselves to praise singers. And I will give you a practical example. At the twilight of the departure of the immediate past government, if you remember, they reeled out all kinds of taxes in addition to the Finance Act. And some of us were saying, all these Finance Acts you are talking, when you look deep inside, all they were doing was they were burdening Nigerians with taxes. Many technocrats came and they were justifying the taxes. A new sheriff came in town, he cancelled the taxes, and they are making a U-turn. How can technocrats not be consistent? The reason why you are called a technical advisor is because that person who is your principal in this case, whether it's a governor or a local government chairman or a president, feels you can advise him or her. But when I notice our technocrats have reduced themselves to, they just reduce themselves to press singers. And whether we accept it or not, the global community is seeing, they know what is going on. Look at gas now. Everybody is saying, go to auto gas, go to auto gas. If you cannot manage a less flammable material like diesel, like petrol, who told you you can manage gas? But let's even look at the direction of gas. Nigeria is a member of Gas Exporting Countries Forum with headquarters in Doha, Qatar. Is Nigeria as lit as Qatar? Does Nigeria have the kind of light and lightning in Qatar? All of you know that from natural gas alone, you will get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get urea. From urea, you will get fertilizer. Is Nigeria rich in fertilizer? The answer is no. From that, you can use your gas to drive gas turbine and generate electricity. So if you look at it, Nigeria has just been reduced to a country where, we are relying on external countries. In fact, another shameful thing going on right now was, I heard that because of the crisis between Ukraine and Russia, Nigeria is already complaining that we may have grain issues. Then the question I'm asking, is the soil chemistry of Ukraine better than the soil chemistry of Nigeria?
Very good question.
Why are we not having fertilizer? The fertilizer that you...
Very, very good question. And apologies for interrupting. You have made a lot of points, but we are almost out of time. And very briefly, just as we said in the intro, the NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress, of course, they're very irritated by everything that's going on right now. They've accused the government of callousness and that the palliatives that have been set out to address this situation, the cart coming after the horse, that they're not transparent enough on how the rollout will be. What's your take on this?
Let me tell you, what we have done is a practical case of shooting before aiming. That was what we did. Then, unfortunately, we have a case where instead of the king's advisors to advise the king before the king spoke, the advisors allowed the king to speak. And citizens are not supposed to talk anyhow so that it will not look as if they are against the king. But looking at the direction Nigeria is going, another shameful thing that is going on is I hear people talking about bringing 200,000 cars, bringing 500. Who told them that it's only cars and buses that we need? The barber that will now go and buy 10 liters at 6,000 naira, how many heads or hair will he cut before he or she breaks even? That lady in the salon that needs to dress or make hair and she goes to buy 10 liters at about 6,000, how many heads will she? And they need to understand that even because of commuting around, many people do not drive cars. People stay at home now. But when you stay at home, there is no electricity from the national grid. So you need a generator. You cannot afford diesel. So you need a petrol generator. And now subsidy has been removed on petrol generators. And I had some people saying that recently, after they removed the subsidy, consumption has gone low. Those people, I feel sorry for them. They are haters of Nigeria. The reason why you are seeing consumption has gone low is because people's disposable income has been eroded. That is the reason they cannot afford. Even if they buy, they cannot break even. People in Nigeria are not using cars as necessity, as luxury. We are using cars because cars are luxury. So I want to just let you understand that whether people accept it or not, the only way forward for Nigeria is to internally domesticate. The only entity that can provide goods and services is the government. That is why whether you have mad people or prostitute or armed robbers living in a community, government must construct road and pass through that community. But when you see a private establishment doing that, it is because that private establishment wants to exploit there and maximize profit. And let me give you a practical example of what subsidy is all about. The only reason why you have public universities, polytechnics, and secondary school is because government needs to provide subsidy in education. So if the vice chancellor, heads of department, and the dean and provost are diverting the money, will you say you will scrap public universities or public higher institutions because they are diverting? You cannot do that. The only reason why you have teaching hospitals, federal medical centers, and health centers is because the government of a country must provide subsidy in health. So if chief medical director and some nurses and doctors are stealing drugs, you will say the next thing, you will scrap public hospital, because that was what they did. We are talking about subsidy in energy. And just like the military, quote me that I said it wasn't the Nigerian military that killed Shekau. So because some of the generals and commanders are diverting funds, then you say you scrap security agents and let everybody go to private schools or private hospitals or have private security, because that was what they did. And I quote me that I said, many people don't know the difference between deregulation and privatization. They cannot tell you the difference between liberalization and commercialization. And that is what we have been reduced to. So we are not only having the wrong pegs in the wrong hole, they are not even qualified to be called pegs. They are boulders and stones.
All right, interesting perspective on the issues of subsidy removal and, of course, the narratives surrounding it. Bala Zaka, energy expert, oil and gas, would like to thank you for your time.